The voters have spoken, and America's finest city is waking up to a new mayor.
Now, Republican Councilman Kevin Faulconer received 9% more votes than Democrat David Alvarez in the mayoral special election. Now, take a look at these numbers here. Faulconer has 54.53% of the votes compared with Alvarez's 45.47%. The win is expected to give new life to the local Republican Party.
Tonight, our message to every single San Diego neighborhood: we will invest where we need to help. We will get our city back on track on the services that San Diegans expect and that they deserve.
Now, UT Politics and Government Editor Michael Smolens joins us with what we can expect from the new mayor. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, all. How are you today?
Very well. I feel rested. I don't know about him.
We had a long night last night, so thank you so much for joining us this
probably
morning.
Not as long as for David Alvarez, or as David Alvarez.
Yeah.
The election was interesting, as we've talked about, that it was a surprise. It was a virtual blowout. 9 points is a huge margin of victory, not quite a landslide. And we're a little bit back to the future in San Diego. We have a moderate Republican mayor now incoming and a Democratic majority on the city council. That's the way it was during the tenure of Jerry Sanders. And while a lot of people didn't like what the city was going through at the time, that was the period where really the city sort of righted itself. Remember, we had the whole pension deficit and a lot of other fiscal issues, and those two entities worked together. And I think you'll see a lot of that with Kevin Faulconer. He's reached across the aisle before. He's going to have to by necessity, and that was one of the first things he talked about this morning. He's got good relations with most of the folks on there, and that, I think, will be a big factor. Everybody looks at the partisan breakdown. We love to do that during elections, but I think, you know, San Diego has a certain nonpartisan aspect to a lot of its issues, and you'll see a lot of crossing the aisles depending on the issue. It's just not a cookie cutter situation.
I do want to take a step back and just talk a little bit about the last poll showing
it was a
virtual dead heat. How could the polls have been so wrong?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not the pollster. I don't know. The electorate, I think, was pretty volatile. The polls, if you look throughout, I mean, the first poll after the primary showed it almost a dead heat. And then a couple weeks later, it showed Faulconer with a huge lead. And then it started coming back. And we were hearing similar kind of sways in the internal polls on both sides, both campaigns. So that's one aspect. But, you know, it's really hard to say why that was. I think that what happened is just that basically Kevin Faulconer won on just about all aspects of the campaign. He obviously had the better absentee and mail ballot situation. We expected him to come out with a lead, but not a 13-point lead. He had a very good ground game. We talked about forever, it seemed like, the Democrats and Labor having this powerful, on-the-ground force on Election Day, as they did back in 2012. Well, the Republicans had a pretty good one, too. Maybe not as good, but good enough when you had that kind of lead. And I think most importantly, he had the better message. He had to, by necessity, again, reach across the political aisle. It's a Democratic city, at least in voter registration, so he campaigned as an independent. He talked about bipartisanship. And I think Alvarez did something that you'll hear a lot of second guessing on, that he sort of doubled down, as I like to say, on the Democratic vote. He went to just to go to the core and thought that would raise him up, with the voter registration advantage. And that just didn't work. Usually when people come out of the primaries, they move to the middle a little bit. He didn't seem to make that effort to get the independents in San Diego, and that's a big core of the vote.
And when can we expect Faulconer to actually be seated?
Well, we're hearing on March 3rd. I don't know that that's locked in, but it takes about 3 weeks or so for the actual vote to be certified so he can be sworn in. But you will see a lot of action starting today. Him working with Todd Gloria. They get along very well for two people of different parties. Todd Gloria, the interim mayor. So I think you'll see a smooth transition. But they have a lot of big issues coming up. The biggest one is the budget. I mean, that's going to turn around and hit him in the face. He needs to produce a budget by April 15th, tax day. And the city has a lot of issues. It's kind of come out of the darkness of its real fiscal problems, but there's not a lot of money to do the kind of things, frankly, that he promised and David Alvarez promised during the campaign.
What else can we expect from Mayor Kevin Faulconer?
Well, like I said, I think that what Kevin Faulconer will bring is a tone. There'll be a lot of comparisons between him and Bob Filner, the last mayor, the short-term mayor. Filner got into problems and got convicted or pled guilty to things involving sexual harassment. But even before then, his whole tone and approach was very combative. I'm going to go in and change things with a sledgehammer. That is not Kevin Faulconer's style. And I think that sort of fits more the mold that San Diegans are familiar with their mayors, be they Democrat and Republican. I think that's going to go a long way to move the city forward. But they have big issues. We will have divisive ballot issues on Barrio Logan. Remember, that's coming up. On this housing fee on businesses for affordable housing. So there's splits on the council on those things. There's a Charger Stadium always to deal with. So there are some huge issues, and he's going to need to cobble together a coalition on the council to get some of these things done and to get, frankly, past some of those divisive issues, because those aren't going away. He's on different sides on some of those key issues, like I mentioned, the housing fee and the Barrio Logan thing. But there are areas where I'm sure they will work together.
All right. Well, government editor Michael Smolens for us this morning. Thank you
what
for keeping us posted. I know we were saying we're going to miss you.
All we've been talking about is the mayor's race. Well, I'm sure
there's plenty to.
You're always welcome.
There's always stuff to talk about in San Diego. Thank you guys. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you,
Michael.
Thank you.